James Webb, the man who has been in charge of America's space program for more than 8 years, announced today that he will retire next month. Webb insisted his decision had nothing to do with the relatively low priority given the space program in recent years because of the war in Vietnam and domestic needs, but he conceded today this is trailing the Soviet Union in the space race and is likely to remain second for some time to come. Webb made his announcement at the White House after a meeting with the president.
We have built a large capability. We are flying out the flights that we programmed, but we are not starting new flights for the 1970s. And at the present time, the Russians are flying a larger number of flights than we are. They are flying larger equipment, as witnessed the flight that they now have in operation. At the end of this fiscal year, they'll be operating a program about twice ours. The teams that we developed cannot be employed full-time, and all the teams cannot be used. But the morale of the group who are important to this country is not low, and great progress is still being made.
ABC science editor Jules Bergman has covered Webb and the space agency for a good many years and offers this appraisal of the man and his mission.
As James Webb leaves office, the United States, far from being behind, has a long lead over Russia in space. We've launched nearly twice as many spacecraft into orbit or toward the planets. American astronauts have orbited 3 times as long as the cosmonauts, and though a Soviet pilot was first, we've scored most of the major feats. For the next year, we'll be launching manned Apollo spacecraft at a furious rate, every 2 months until the lunar landing. But what happens then? It's the future that's in doubt. And that is precisely where James Webb failed. His backers boasted that Webb could go to Capitol Hill and come back with buckets of money from the Congress. Maybe so, and maybe in the old days. But anybody could then. That all ended 2 years ago. Caught by the tragedy of the Apollo fire, his credibility destroyed by the congressional hearings, Webb lost his usefulness. Vietnam took more and more money, and the crisis of the cities had to be met. Now the space agency is crippled. It's a one-project agency, Apollo. The scientific and planetary programs have no real money. Aeronautical research, where America once led the world, has fallen far behind. After Apollo, NASA has no approved follow-on program. It has nowhere to go. So as Webb, who could use more words to say less than any man in Washington, leaves, he leaves a crisis of leadership. An agency of dedicated people on the threshold of their greatest achievement is now foundering. The old days of political administrators are gone. The next president, whoever he is, must rebuild NASA with a top-ranked scientific administrator, like it needed in the first place. This is Jules Bergman.
A 3-man Apollo 7 spacecraft is scheduled to be launched on October 11th. Today, trouble with ground equipment held up a countdown rehearsal at Cape Kennedy. Yesterday, the Russians sent an unmanned spaceship toward the moon. In England, Professor Bernard Lovell, director of the Jodrell Bank Observatory, said the Soviet launch may be the first in an important new series of what Lovell called Russian lunar exercises.
In the valley of the jolly,
ho, ho, ho,
Green Giant.
One night, while the Valley Band played their Symphony Under the Stalks, the Green Giant requested his favorite.
Cream-style corn serenade.
This selection reminds the Giant of his special patented process, which creams his corn so it's never too thick and never too thin. Always smooth and sweet.
Creamy corn, the creamiest, cream the way you like it best. Creamy corn coming from the valley.
Try Green Giant brand cream-style corn. The Green Giant also takes tender kernels of his Niblets corn and puts them up with almost no water. Then they're vacuum packed to stay crisp. Try the Green Giant's Niblets brand corn.
In the valley of the jolly,
ho, ho, ho,
Green Giant.
Vice President Humphrey today talked of a familiar topic, law and order, which he prefers to call order with justice. Mr. Humphrey reiterated his intention to enforce the law after one of his special task forces reported that many Americans are afraid to walk in their own neighborhoods at night.
What we seek is order and justice. The Rap Browns, the Stokely Carmichaels, the extremists of the left and the right, will not have their way, and we will not allow them to terrorize or stampede America or cause us to lose our sense of perspective. I will stop riots by increased training of our local police and National Guard in riot control, including the creation of a highly trained, effective, well-disciplined mobile units which can act immediately to stop civil disorders in their early stages. We need not follow the path of blind repression and counter-violence, which only tends to increase loss of property and loss of life and loss of control. But let me make it perfectly clear. The riots can be, must, and will be stopped. I will welcome dissent, as I always have, but not violence and destructive action which actually obstructs progress. I believe it would be well for us to recognize these two principles. Dissent, yes. Disorder, no.
Later in the program, I'll have something to say about law and order. ABC's political editor, Bill Lawrence, has not let a brief illness keep him from following politics, politicians, and politicking. And he thinks the Democrats should be worrying about their health.
After 2 weeks of enforced rest in the Midlands, out of their hurly-burly of politics, my own view is the 1968 presidential campaign not only started badly for the Democrats, but it appears going downhill. Worse, they already are panicking in the search for single-shot, sure-kill political solutions. Vice President Humphrey's bad luck is that he's running against the new Nixon, not the old. The old one this year is using the name Spiro T. Agnew and asserting that Humphrey is soft on everything. The unsmiling warrior at the top of the GOP ticket runs like a stopwatch. Humphrey, who has always talked too much, still does. And even when he attacks, he sounds defensive. Retiring President Johnson asserts repeatedly that he'll remain above the partisan fray. And the most massive aid he could give to the Democrats would be to keep that promise religiously. All of the big polls, surveys, and my own unscientific soundings show the Democrats likely to lose the White House. Of course, we could all be wrong, as we were in 1948, when President Truman beat an overconfident Tom Dewey. But I think a more valid comparison is not 1948, but 1952, when the country, also longing for peace and quiet and the end of another unpopular war, turned away from Democrats who talked too much and perhaps did too much too soon. This is Bill Lawrence in Washington.
Georgia's Governor Lester Maddox says he's going to campaign for George Wallace. Maddox briefly was a candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination last month, and he walked out of the convention, and today he said he never had been a member of the National Democratic Party. In California, Richard Nixon is visiting his birthplace, Yorba Linda, this evening. Later, he addresses a rally in Orange County. In a moment, a look at Nixon's running mate.
To prove Playtex living bras have the lovely look you can't wash out, this hospital laundry washed them under the toughest laundry conditions in hospital detergent and bleach. Even after 50 machine washings, these bras still stretch like new. Side stretch this way, every way. And how do Playtex bras feel? The nurses who wore them say,
mine's really comfortable. Mine still fits like new.
For the lovely look you can't wash out, Playtex living bras.
Hello.
Mr. Snitzer, what is your opinion about...
How do you do? Nice to see you.
Mrs. Snitzer, how do you feel after the strenuous campaigning?
My girdle is killing me.
Excuses.
She needs the new 18-hour girdle by Playtex. It's made from a remarkable new fabric Playtex just invented. A delicate webbing with the strength to hold you firm all day. The first firm control girdle that's comfortable for hours. The new 18-hour girdle by Playtex.
Mr. Nixon's running mate, Spiro Agnew, resumes his campaign tonight in Fort Worth, Texas. A report now by ABC's Don North on Mr. Agnew and his technique of campaigning.
At the governor's mansion in Annapolis, Maryland, Spiro Agnew relaxes at ping pong with his daughter Susan. He says one thing he learned from Dick Nixon is to take time to relax. Nixon learned that lesson in 1960. Campaigning in all 50 states left him exhausted when he needed to be at his best. Governor Agnew says if you're tired, you're going to make mistakes.
Governor, you're talking earlier about, if I can toss in a few questions at you in between the shots here.
Sure.
On the campaign, worrying sometimes about making a mistake sometime.
Well, it doesn't exactly preoccupy you, because I guess we all make a few mistakes here and there. But there is always the possibility in a campaign that's covered as intensely as this one. Sue! See what I mean about Susan? See, she had that killer instinct then.
The governor's own killer instinct comes through in speeches and at press conferences, a sharp contrast to his manner with individual reporters. In a midnight chat on his chartered jet, he gives his rationale for conventional campaign oratory.
Sure, I'm going to give a simplistic approach that I think is a fair and honest appraisal of the ultimate objectives of my campaign. I can't treat this like a press conference. I'd lose my audience. No, I'm completely candid to say that. There are a great many important issues in this campaign, but I think the issue of law and order dominates the campaign, and very possibly the issue of law and order may decide the 1968 election. Law and order come when government makes up its mind that the people and the Constitution, not the mob, will rule America. Anarchy is not the answer, nor is rioting the inalienable right of any citizen. But every politician, has a heck of a problem in doing the pro forma things that are expected in a political gathering to stimulate and encourage the grassroots support, which require an oversimplification. You see somebody go into a political gathering and try to qualify, he's lost. The speech falls like a dead balloon.
Agnew's first admitted mistake was calling Vice President Humphrey soft on communism, but he insisted this was no worse than Humphrey's reference to Nixon as a wobbler on Vietnam.
I said squishy soft, and I'm not proud of it. The Vice President said wiggly and wobbly, and I doubt if he's proud of that. So we're going to try to get off of these catchphrases. As far as I'm concerned, we're going to get off of them and move to the substantive issues of this campaign. I've never been a particular admirer of former Senator Joseph McCarthy. I didn't approve of the witch hunts that took place at that time. I still don't approve of them. And had I known that my remark was to be related in some way to cast me as the Joe McCarthy of 1968, I would have turned 5 somersaults to avoid saying it.
The governor says he wants to get to the issues. Well, we'll see. So far in this campaign, his talk of the issues has been limited to pointing to the problems, like Vietnam, racial unrest, inflation, and balance of payments. Only in the area of the urban crises has he offered any positive plan of action. This is Don North, ABC News.
Senator Gordon Allott of Colorado told the Senate Judiciary Committee today that he believes Abe Fortas helped draft legislation for the administration in May while serving as a justice of the Supreme Court. Upon that conclusion, among others, Allott said, "I cannot support his nomination for Chief Justice." The Judiciary Committee is expected to approve the nomination tomorrow, but opponents of the Fortas nomination say they will try to block confirmation on the Senate floor through a filibuster beginning probably on Monday.
Captain, your wife's on the periscope. My wife? I think she's trying to tell me something.
Left us defenseless.
I used up the right guard.
Gillette Right Guard. #1 with men and women because this is the spray they can share. The scent, clean and fresh. Protection, second to none. So share the Right Guard. Don't leave your family defenseless. Gillette Foamy Shaving Cream. So creamy rich. So creamy thick. So creamy moist. So creamy smooth. In fact, in every 11-ounce can of Foamy, there are 5 pints of cream. Can your shaving cream measure up to Gillette Foamy?
Despite censorship, the Czechoslovak press today defended the economic policies of former Deputy Premier Otasik, who was forced out of office by Russian pressure. The newspapers carried a statement by 13 prominent Czech economists upholding Sik's management system. That system provided for incentives, profits, and decentralized planning. There were also newspaper accounts of the burial of 2 young Czechs, and that story reflected the results of the occupation far more starkly than could any diplomatic report. ABC's Russell Jones reports.
Not all the victims of the occupation of Czechoslovakia died in the first few days. Not all of them died in Prague, and not all of them were shot down by the Soviets. 2 young people were killed in the small town of Yichin in eastern Bohemia in the 3rd week of the occupation. Yaroslav Vesely was 24, a member of the Communist Party, a machinist in a tractor factory. Killed with him was Dana Klimesova. Their crime, fault, or mistake was to go to the movies in a Czech village in September 1968. They were machine gunned by Polish soldiers as they came home from the village movie house. No one is quite sure what started the shooting, but the reason can hardly matter. They were Czech civilians in Czechoslovakia, and they were killed by foreign soldiers who came uninvited to their homeland. Russell Jones, ABC, Prague.
The military regime in Greece today extended indefinitely the state of siege in that country, which curtails individual rights and press freedom. The regime made public a proposed constitution that is to be submitted to a nationwide referendum later this month. Premier Papadopoulos said today that King Constantine would be permitted to return to Greece after the elections were held, but today's announcement said the elections will not be conducted until the government decides the time is right. There are reports tonight that at the invitation of South Vietnam's President Thu, General Duong Van Minh will end 3 years of political exile and return to Saigon on October 1st, possibly as a presidential advisor. It was General Minh, who was known as Big Minh, who led the military revolt that ended the government of Ngo Dinh Diem in 1963. ABC's Bill Brannigan in Vietnam says the action by Thu reflects his government's strength and stability. Apparently, Thu is no longer afraid that the return of Big Minh might bring on political turmoil among the South Vietnamese. Brannigan also sees Minh's return as the end of Vice President Key's political power. Key is a determined opponent of General Minh, and he led the campaign to exile the general in 1965. General Minh has spent most of the past 3 years living quietly in Bangkok. In a moment, more on Vietnam.
Hey, did you sell those 100 shares of logo stock for me?
Just now, at 8 1/2.
Ah, good. By the skin of your teeth. Market just closed.
Hey, it's that time already.
Oh, you ditched that cigarette pretty fast.
Well, they run out of taste about now.
Never happens with mine.
Viceroy?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they so different?
I don't know. They just always taste good. Taste never quits.
Those are closing, folks?
Oh, yeah, look. You were right. Datron climbed 3 5/8.
Great. You were right about these. They're good.
Viceroy? Taste never quits.
Fine tobaccos are perfectly matched with the Viceroy filter to make sure the good taste never quits. King size or new extra length Viceroy filter longs. Either way, the good taste never quits.
In Vietnam today, Allied troops are making an inventory of the tons of enemy equipment and supplies captured during the weekend near Saigon. The prize discovery in the raids was a rocket launcher that can fire 12 rockets simultaneously. A captured North Vietnamese lieutenant led government infantrymen to the launcher, which was hidden in a village only 10 miles south of Saigon and could have been used for bombardment of the capital city. General Creighton Abrams, the U.S. commander in Vietnam, is quoted as saying, once he saw the rocket launcher, "God Almighty, if they are going to send these things down, we'll have to capture them." The Navy plans to release about 600 air reservists who were called to active duty when North Korea captured the USS Pueblo last January. The Pentagon said the duties of the reservists can now be handled by regular Navy units. At the same time, the Air Force indicates there may be early release from active duty for about 14,000 Air Guard and Reserve members who have been on active duty since the seizure of the Pueblo. Despite these announcements, there is no letdown in vigilance along Korea's demilitarized zone. ABC's Roger Peterson reports.
Here along the Korean DMZ, the duty is similar to guarding a stockade. In the 18-mile sector watched by the Americans, the 10-foot-high chain-link fence marks the southern boundary of no man's land. Beyond the fence lie rolls of concertina wire, minefields, and communist North Korea. Scattered every few hundred yards like wooden pillboxes on stilts, guard towers look north over the fence. All of this is necessary to keep North Korean infiltrators from coming south, either to try to start a guerrilla war, terrorize the people, or even, as was the case last January, attempt to assassinate South Korean President Park Chung-hee. Since the 31-man assassination squad got through the wire in January and the Pueblo was seized a week later, the alertness, efficiency, and effectiveness of the men from the U.S. 2nd Division has improved greatly. The main changes have been a strengthening of the fence and improved patrolling within the southern half of the demilitarized zone. Regular patrols plus irregular ambushes have kept the infiltration down to a minimum, despite fears last winter that the North Koreans would attempt their greatest infiltration effort this summer. Although the major fighting stopped 15 years ago, clashes with infiltrators have claimed the lives of 10 Americans so far this year. Another 31 have been wounded. North Korea's President Kim Il-sung keeps threatening to reunite the two Koreas, and he could start sending divisions rather than infiltrators south. Kim's belief that America might not respond strongly was born with the restrained response to the seizure of the Pueblo, and could be heightened to a dangerous level by an American apology for the Pueblo incident. Roger Peterson, ABC in the Korean Demilitarized Zone.
2 days of heavy rains have flooded large sections of southern England, and weathermen are warning of the possibility of more rain. At least 4 persons are reported dead, and hundreds have been flooded out of their homes. A London suburb only 5 miles from the center of the city is under 3 feet of water, and rail travel in and out of London has been disrupted. 2-month-old Deborah Lynn Lee, who received the heart and both lungs of another infant in a transplant operation yesterday, died today in Houston, Texas. Portuguese Premier Antonio Salazar took a turn for the worse today, and the government reports grave anxiety about his condition. Salazar underwent surgery 9 days ago for a removal of a blood clot. He is 79 years old. On the New York Stock Exchange today, Dow Jones Industrials were up more than 4 points. More than 13 million shares were traded. The New York Stock Exchange Index was up 20 cents. On the American Stock Exchange, more than 6.5 million shares were traded. The American Stock Exchange Index was up 11 cents. In a moment, still another comment on law and order.
You throw a lot of good things in here that cost a lot of money. Permanent press, synthetics, colors. So why risk yellowing or graying from strong stain removing? That's why we invented Safe Day Bright Bleach. You just can't buy anything safer and better to help whiten and brighten than Day Bright with borax and 2 brighteners. Use strong bleach or pre-soak for tough stains, and Day Bright to whiten and brighten everything else.
Mom! What's wrong, dear? Janie says our house smells like it's got bad breath.
Yeah, housetosis. Halitosis is bad news, but here's good news. New Wizard air freshener with the special formula that cures halitosis fast. And New Wizard has a decorator look. 6 light scents, each like a breath of fresh air. New Wizard cures halitosis fast.
How about another Schlitz, Bill? Gosh, Charlie, I just ran out of Schlitz. Oh, that's okay. Make it a... no. How about a... no. See, when you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer.
There's just one Schlitz. Nothing else comes near. When you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer.
Quality never comes easy. Schlitz is most carefully brewed for smoothness, gusto, and aroma without beer bite. This is pure beer. This is Schlitz.
If you like it light with a big taste too, there's only one brew that will do. When you're out of Schlitz,
No second choice.
you're out of beer. Real gusto in the great light beer Schlitz.
The beer that made Milwaukee famous.
So now the Vice President has come out with another statement on law and order. He is for it and against crime. Mr. Nixon says the same thing, so there is not much to choose between them on that issue. The trouble is, it's sort of a non-issue. When presidential candidates talk about prevention of crime, they may mean the nefarious activities of thugs and footpads, but they are quite willing to have us all believe they are talking about rioters and looters. And it's about time we got it into our heads that there is a big difference between amateurs and professionals in this crime business. The rioters are not professionals. They are merely opportunists who seize the chance created by events to snatch a case of beer or a rack full of dresses or suits. They really don't deserve all the high-level attention they're getting from presidential candidates. On the other hand, the forgotten American of this campaign is not, as Mr. Nixon says, the quiet citizen who does not burn, loot, and riot, and who merely works for a living, pays his taxes, cuts the grass, and goes to the ball game. The forgotten American is the legitimate crook, the honest burglar, the skilled safecracker. After all, these people may have spent years learning their trade in the best American tradition, and it is not fair to lump them in with all the shiftless bums who never do anything but stand around and wait for somebody to start a fire so they can grab a few miserable pairs of shoes or a refrigerator. Professional crooks deserve recognition by the candidates, but they won't get it, because no politician can make a crowd roar with a pledge to stamp out jewel thieves or swindlers or embezzlers. I haven't read the latest warning from J. Edgar Hoover, but I suspect jewel thieves and swindlers and embezzlers are increasing in number, just as communists always are. But neither Mr. Humphrey, nor Mr. Nixon, nor for that matter George Wallace, has any program for them. The candidates ignore these hard-working Americans at their peril. Those who have not yet been caught may even vote, perhaps several times, and they do not like being classed with looters and rioters. They know the difference between amateurs and professionals. That's tonight's news and comment.